diving trip with Eddie Fromenwieler, boat owner, adventurer, underwater filmmaker.
Hi, I'm Eddie. I'm here in Eastern Indonesia and I'm on the island of Misero. And I bring you to one of my dream spots.
In Eddie's ocean, there are huge creatures, such as the whale shark, the biggest fish in the sea. Or the manta ray. But Eddie's passion is for the small creatures. These make up his paradise. Eddie's paradise is teeming with life, but more of that later. First of all, he swims into an opening at his dream spot. I would never go in here alone, but Eddie loves caves like this. Inside, something very unusual could be hiding, and that's what Eddie wants to see and film. Making new discoveries is his passion. The interior of the cave is like a church. We come across a special fish, a paddle-fin cardinal fish, and also a striped shrimp that scuttles away when confronted with the floodlights. In spite of it all, I'm glad to go through the dog's hole and out into the open again. Following Eddie is not always easy. I have real trouble squeezing myself through the narrow opening. Outside is the diving spot which Eddie named Vreneli's Garden. Plants and flowers are non-existent in this garden. Instead, there are sea snails in abundance. Some are large, others are tiny, like this eolid nudibranch. It eats coral polyps and stores the stinging cells in its appendages. Nudibranchs in all colors and shapes. Finally, we come across a special eolid nudibranch. Living in its appendages are single-celled algae, which supply the creature with energy through photosynthesis. That's why the Americans call it solar-powered. And already our first dive has come to an end.
Hast du wenigstens den Wind, kannst du segeln.
The rubber dinghy brings us back to Eddie's boat, the Pindito, an island of civilization in the middle of the water wilderness. What fascinates Eddie about the tiny creatures that we have seen?
Colors, shapes, camouflage, how those creatures are colored. We don't dare to combine colors like that as they combine down there. We don't dare. We are not so well camouflaged as those guys down there. It's very hard to find those small creatures in the reef, and that's a challenge.
Eddie gives orders to set sail. Although he is Swiss, he speaks fluent Indonesian. After all, he is married to an Indonesian and father of 2 children. His family lives in Bali. Eddie's ship under sail. A magnificent sight, although on the Pindito the sails are rarely hoisted. Usually the motor provides the power. Eddie, the 48-year-old chief on board, designed and built the 30-meter-long boat himself, although he had never done anything like that before.
Others build a house and you build the ship.
Yeah, if you want to travel around here in Indonesia with so many islands, you need a ship. So that's why I built a ship.
But what were your qualifications? Did you have a lot of money and did you have a lot of know-how how to build a ship?
I had no money, I had no know-how to build a ship, but I have, let's say, a little bit of a courage. And with my background as a general mechanician, a truck driver, and traveling the world, I have not two left hands, I have two good hands where I can make something, build something. So I thought I can also build a ship.
Eddie grew up as the second youngest of 10 children. He tried his hand as a mechanic, long-distance lorry driver, and leader of adventure tours before he succumbed to the wilds of Irian Jaya, an absolutely stunning area. Irian Jaya lies north of Australia in eastern Indonesia. The offshore islands of Raja Ampat are Eddie's paradise. In geological terms, the islands are coral formations which were forced up out of the sea millions of years ago. Why is Eddie, alias Indiana Jones, so in love with this particular region?
It's in Indonesia, the whole Moluccas, the whole western Papua area is a white patch on the touristic map of Indonesia. There is no tourism at all, but there are thousands of islands. So I thought I go there where nobody is. So that's why I'm here.
So you're attracted by the wilderness?
I'm attracted by the wilderness. I thought 2,000 islands, somewhere it must be beautiful. And I came here to Raja Ampat and I just fell in love with Raja Ampat and because it's so beautiful.
What do you like about it?
The remoteness, the beautiful islands, the landscape, the diving, just everything, just great. And nobody else here. The only ship for 10 years. What else do you want to ask for?
Now you started filming. What made you go down with an underwater camera?
I wanted to capture the beauty of the underwater, but not the big stuff. I wanted to capture the beauty, the small macro life, which nobody knows about it. Everybody has seen pictures of whales, mantas and stuff like that, but nobody has, or hardly anybody has seen small nudibranch, tunicates, crabs, shrimps, yeah, the macro stuff, you know.
The first catch of our camera hunt, a shoal of barracudas. Eddie's objective is the small creatures. At a depth of 28 meters in the reef channel, sea pens stretch upwards. Soft corals which fill up with water if there is enough current. Eddie shows us what can be found on a sea pen when you take the time and observe carefully. Thousands of coral polyps make up the sea pen. The polyps catch plankton with their tentacles as the water streams past. On these sea pens, again smaller creatures are living. A perfectly camouflaged spider crab with polyps on its shell is hiding here, watched by a small goby. The crab sticks coral polyps onto its back and claws for protection and camouflage. Next to it, a small transparent shrimp leaps over the polyps. A sea feather nearby serves as an apartment for a porcelain crab. And on another, sedentary crustaceans known as barnacles are firmly established. And all this on a few insignificant sea pens. On Eddie's boat, the Pindito, part of the crew are taking a break, while the rest are at work. In the galley, the meal is being prepared. The head chef is Eddie's sister-in-law, Tina. The 8 cabins for the dive tourists are put in order. Eddie employs a crew of 16 people. They live in this accommodation. Compared to Europe, salaries are low, but by Indonesian standards, they earn well. Most have worked here for years and readily put up with the many months spent at sea. They can even afford modern cell phones, although they can only make calls when in port. There is no reception in the wilderness. Everything on board is geared to the comfort of the European guests. They are Eddie's livelihood.
Essen! Essen!
The maximum number of dive tourists is 16, with the majority coming from Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. After dinner today, Eddie shows his film about building the Pindito.
Okay, ich erzähle, wie ich das Schiff gebaut habe, im 91.
Now I will tell you how I built the boat. In 1991, I was in Kalimantan on the island of Pulau Laut, and I dug a trench, a sort of dry dock, as the clay content is high. I made a hole 4 meters deep, 30 meters long, 12 meters wide.
Und dann am 31. März habe ich mir ein Geburtstagsgeschenk gemacht.
Then on the 31st of March, I made myself a birthday present and placed a keel into the dock. The timber is from tree trunks of 24 to 28 meters long and was attached to oil drums to stop it from sinking. The hardwood is heavier than water with a specific gravity of approximately 1.3. It sinks like a stone.
Spezifisches Gewicht von 1,3 ungefähr. Also es saugt ab wie ein Stein. Und das ist daran gegangen, die Kiel fertig auf Maß schneiden.
There you see the keel being cut to size with the chainsaw. Imagine a 24-meter long, 40-centimeter deep straight cut, and I had to do it myself, as the boys had no idea what to do with the saw. Now we are in the process of placing the entire keel construction with the ribs onto the lowest keel.
How many workers did you have?
I started working with about 25 people. Later, when the boat was in the water, I had more than 80. Here you have an impression of it from the outside. It's starting to look like a boat.
The bare boat cost around $500,000 US, and when fully fitted with all installations, about $800,000. Eddie had to raise the money from friends and relatives, going into debt, but the risk proved worthwhile.
What you see here are the final preparations before getting the boat afloat. We call this the mud film. The boys are actually working in the mud. Then we take away the clay barrier, which has kept us dry from the sea. We had to remove it in 2 days. And afterwards comes the great day, the 21st of January 1992, just over 10 months after the laying of the keel. At 7:30 in the evening, we launched the boat on the water.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Let's go diving.
That's it.
Night dives are fantastic in this region, as in the darkness, creatures come into view who otherwise hide away during the day. Finding the dive site in darkness, however, is not always easy.
Nyala lagi.
Okay.
First of all, we encounter a leopard shark. Actually, this shark is completely harmless, but the lights from our cameras seem to irritate it. Our next creature is a big sea turtle. It is resting under an overhanging rock. That is the antenna of a large nudibranch, a so-called Spanish dancer. Like many snails, it is a hermaphrodite, that's to say both male and female. Eddie tickles it in order to make it dance. Graceful movements such as these give the Spanish dancer its name. Also on the Spanish dancer, there are often stowaways. An emperor shrimp is hiding among the gills of the slug. It has matched its color to its landlady. However, it doesn't seem to like the spotlight of the camera. The search for living creatures continues. The colors on the reef are overwhelming. In the artificial light, we have brought with us soft corals, sea fans, and feather stars come to life in all their magnificence. But even in this world of color, it is worth looking very closely. Then you suddenly find tiny spider crabs crawling all over the sea fans. It's the same story on the soft corals, which are teeming with porcelain and spider crabs that can mostly be seen at night. After we surface, the dinghy is waiting for us.
Ist ganz Riff beleuchtet wie ein Tanzsaal.
It brings us back to the Pindito.
Hey, Ochi. Hello.
In the meantime, the crew has been fishing a nice meal.
Bravo! Ini tidak tahu siapa yang makan. Meja 17, meja 16.
The next day, gray clouds are gathering above the Pindito. This is also typical for tropical islands. Where jungle is luxuriant, it does rain every now and then. The only way to escape the dull weather is to go diving in Eddie's paradise. And once again, the search begins for unusual creatures. Eddie's passion. This time we come across a fire urchin. Its spines are poisonous and cause a burning sensation when touched. This sea urchin is also worth studying carefully. For instance, Coleman shrimps are living hidden among the spines. They are named after Australian diver Neville Coleman, who discovered them several years ago. The shrimps live on the sea urchins in pairs, a large female and a smaller male. Eddie must be careful, as the fire urchins can move quite fast. For this, they have special feet filled with water. On the fire urchins, we also find a zebra crab. Today, for the first time, Eddie is filming a yellow shrimp. It also finds protection among the poisonous spines. Whether this is of benefit to the sea urchin is unknown. The next living thing we encounter is a salpa colony. They are almost transparent tunicats, which are connected to each other and drift through open water, feeding on plankton. The waters of Irian Jaya constantly reveal new surprises. Does Eddie fight for the protection of this area?
Yes, I fight for protection. Just last year we had a group of scientists here on board, and we traveled the whole Raja Ampat area, and they have done some great discoveries here, that this is the most diverse area in any sense you can think of, especially underwater, coral-wise, fish-wise, and stuff like that. It's just the abundance here, the diversity is so great, like the scientists were saying, never seen before.
If you look carefully, there is always something new. That's a whip gorgonian, a red coral bush with white polyps. Concealed on it is another, even smaller micro-wood. They are strange creatures, not even as big as a fingernail, so-called skeleton shrimps. They appear to come from another world, and they look like praying mantis. They collect plankton from the water flowing past. At the same time, they execute peculiar dance and fight rituals on the red branches of the whip gorgonians. Nearby, in coral bush, we find another odd creature, a harlequin ghost pipefish, a relative of the seahorse and a master in camouflage. The next star in front of Eddie's lens, a cuttlefish. As quick as lightning, it can change its color, making a perfect camouflage. To crown it all, Eddie discovers a seahorse near the shore. The female seahorses place their eggs in the front pouch of the male, who then gives birth to the young. Eddie is pleased, as it is not every day that you find a seahorse. On board, the video of the dive is immediately reviewed.
Das ist ein Dornisee-Pferd, oder?
Sieht nicht wie wir vorne raus.
Das ist ein sogenanntes Fischauge, oder?
Ja, das ist schön.
Das ist schön.
Sepia, ja. Ja. Ja, weil der, den ich gesehen habe, der war eben nicht so farbig. Das war schade. Er war dann so grau, weißt du? Der ist jetzt schön gel. Oh, schau mal da.
Ist der gleiche?
Hast du gesehen, wie schnell, ja. Ja.
Your world, that is the underwater world, is also in dangers, a lot of dangers. Did it change in the last 10 years you have been diving here?
Yes, definitely changed a lot. Especially 10 years ago when we came here, we have seen every dive, we have seen 4, 5, 10 sharks. Nowadays we hardly see any sharks anymore because they probably went all to Hong Kong, or only the fins went to Hong Kong. And turtles are no more so abundant. There are a lot of reefs which 10 years ago were still beautiful. They are now also, some of them are destroyed because of fish bombing, cyaniding and so on. But I must admit, that was especially the beginning, the first 4 or 5 years. Still was a lot of bombing and cyaniding, and this has definitely decreased. But the shark finning, I believe, is still going on.
And do you hope that one of these days there will be a national park here?
I hope so, and the people are working hard now to really create a national park. As I was proposing many years ago to the government here in Sorong, I told them to make national parks, because if you want to attract investors, you have to protect the area first before you can attract investors to come here to make resorts and so on. So yes, I try to do in my way certain things.
Eddie has already taken steps in order to protect this region. The aim is to convince the authorities that it is also possible to make money from a nature park. Otherwise, this last wilderness will be destroyed, since the pressure of population in Indonesia is enormous. However, at the moment, the bizarre labyrinth of islands is still largely unpopulated.
Bye. Let me see. Bisa datang?
In the evening, we run into a few fishermen who have settled under these cliffs, an extremely cramped place to stay. The fishermen are native Papuans and will fish here for several weeks before returning to their village.
Itu ratu karapu hidup atau bagaimana? Hidup.
Pakai umpan.
Pakai pancing mata kail. Itu bahaya untuk karang-karang semua nanti mati.
Tidak.
Itu mereka bayar per kilo kah atau per ekor? Per kilo. Berapa 1 kilo?
Die fischen für Export, das ist für Hongkong Lebigfisch.
They fish for export for Hong Kong. The fish are alive. They catch them with a rod. Earlier they fished with cyanide, destroying the reef, or at least parts of it. Now they have learned not to do that and catch the fish by angling.
Do you have much contact with the natives?
Contact not so much, as we are always on the move and the islands are widely spread out. Now and again we come across people like these in outrigger boats for a few weeks with children, household and hens on board. They collect sea cucumbers, mussels, alongside catching fish. They put the fish they have caught in their nets and keep them alive. They wait until a bigger boat comes and then it's loaded on and sold.
Dann warten sie, bis ein grösseres Schiff kommt und dann es verladen und dann wird es so verkauft.
Is it more or less intact around here?
Yes, here it is in a pretty good state. 10 years ago when I came, there was so much dynamite and cyanide fishing, but now they have learned how destructive that is. They tend to do it less.
South Sea feeling in the evening. The crew of the Pindito sing as the sun goes down. The next morning in the picturesque bay of Wayak, pictures as in paradise. And of course, Eddie goes diving with his guests 4 times a day. Always with him is his video camera in its underwater housing, complete with lights. On the surface, the equipment weighs about 12 to 15 kilos. Underwater, it is almost weightless. The Pindito rocks at anchor in deeper water. The rubber dinghy speeds us to the dive site. Underneath the overhang near the surface, we find a fantastic underwater landscape with soft corals and gorgonians, which usually only live at a much greater depth. With so much beauty, even cameras can bump into each other. Above on the reef, we suddenly come across this abandoned canister. It's a fisherman's bomb that fortunately didn't explode. Such bombs can be devastating for a reef. They kill all life in the surrounding zone, from the largest creature right down to the microorganism. This find is yet another example that everything possible must be done to protect these magnificent reefs. When there is a current, the colorful soft corals pump themselves full of water and expand their splendor. Behind shoals of anchovies, Eddie in paradise. Again today, Eddie's search is concentrated on specific tiny creatures that are to be found on this type of sea fan. They are tiny pygmy seahorses, just 1 to 2 centimeters in size. They were discovered just a few years ago and live well camouflaged on sea fans. The hump on their body imitates that of the coral polyps, and you have to be very observant in order to see them at all. Often it is necessary to search dozens of sea fans before you find one. This is another type of pygmy seahorse. Its name is Hippocampus denise, after the American underwater photographer Denise Tackett. This seahorse was scientifically recognized only in 2003. Wherever you look carefully, you find more perfectly camouflaged creatures. Here, for instance, 2 sea snails, known as spindle cowries. This object consists of neither coral nor sponge, but of 2 orange-colored frog or anglerfish, a small one moving around on a larger one. They are scarcely recognizable. Here is the eye and the mouth of the big one, and the small frogfish is sitting on top. They wait for a catch to swim by, then snap it up in an instant. There are enough victims here, a gigantic shoal of small glass fish, for instance. Our cruise continues.
We're just about at the equator. There'll be a little bump. Just watch the GPS and we can see it's going to take 3, 2, 1. This is the equator. Did you feel the bump?
Today, Eddie takes us on a trip into the island labyrinth of Miso. Our journey is continually held up due to the shallows. We have to prevent the rubber boat from scraping the sharp coral. Inside the labyrinth, macabre surprises await us.
Those are former inhabitants of Misool, East Indonesia. There are whole families with skulls from children and adults. I have no idea how old they are. Certainly from a few generations ago, because nowadays it's no longer the custom. At that time, people had no way of making graves because of the rocky landscape, and they also didn't want to throw them into the sea. All over the region, in caves and washed-out hollows, skeletons can be found. Sometimes there are beautiful Chinese plates, presents or offerings. But, unfortunately, grave robbers have often plundered them, because it's really beautiful Chinese porcelain and certainly has a value.
Up to now, that is the largest cave that Eddie has discovered on his expeditions. You can row in by boat. Inside is a cavern as vast as a cathedral. What can possibly be found here underwater? Eddie's motto for life is to discover, and so probably as the first people ever, we glide inside the unknown cave, between stalactites and stalagmites, and into a mysterious world. No creatures are to be found in here. However, the mysterious cave leaves behind a lasting impression.
Affengeil.
That's cool.
Back to the Pindito. For 12 years, Eddie has been diving in these waters, up to 4 times a day. There he has both seen and filmed more than others. In addition, he has acquired an enormous knowledge about the marine life of these waters. On board, we take a look at Eddie's underwater video archive.
Eddie, you have one of the most fantastic underwater video archives of the world. What are you going to do with it?
I'm not sure if it's the most fantastic one, but I have a lot of special things, very small creatures and so on. And what I would like to do with it, maybe make a whiff guide on a DVD, or maybe somebody would like to buy the footage for some movies and so on. I don't know. I still have to work on it.
What's the most fantastic scene you've ever filmed?
One of the most fantastic scenes I ever have done, I believe so, is a seahorse who gives birth to hundreds of small babies. That was a fantastic moment, and I think that...
And it's the males that does it?
That's the males who give birth to the seahorse, the babies, and I believe so that probably the first shot worldwide which is done in the wild. We were lucky, you were there as well. We were lucky enough to see it straight away happening.
There's also a bobbit worm. It's a very strange alien. I mean, it could go to Hollywood and make a new alien film there.
Maybe, you never know, maybe it will go so far.
Let's have a look at that.
That's really a strange creature. If you look at it, it looks like a tube worm with long antennas which he's pulling out, and one after the other. And if you look, there is on top, there is another spine going out. Here he's eating just some salps or whatever. It's a very strange creature. Yeah, it could be the next Alien movie, yeah, definitely.
And do you know what kind of animal it is? Have you shown it to any scientists?
I haven't found it in any book so far. I don't know what it is, but I believe it belongs to the bobbit worm family, but it probably is just a different thing, like you have the...
And the bobbit worm is a worm that lives in the sand and comes out to eat.
Yes, the original bobbit worm is about probably like a $2 coin or whatever diameter. It lives in the sand. The guy here is like a finger. It's so small, like a finger. He lives in the sand. He has a hole there. I don't know how long it is, but bobbit worm, they say it's 2-3 meters long. I don't know how long this guy here is, but what he has in the front, what he shows to us, that's something very special.
You have also hairy octopus. Sounds strange that an octopus gets hair.
Hairy octopus, yeah, that's also something very strange. It looks like he has algae on his skin. I don't know if it's a grow of his own or he's decorating himself with his algae.
It's a species unknown to science.
There is in one of the book of octopus, there is a picture of this hairy octopus, but it's also written SP, that means not known definitely what it is.
And also a hairy frogfish. I mean, to find a frogfish is difficult enough, but to find a hairy one even more.
To find a hairy frogfish is very something special because he's even more camouflaged into the reef or in his area where he lives. And normally he lives just in the rubble where there's a lot of fuss around and algae and stuff like that. To find him inside there, it's very difficult to. And you must be lucky to find it.
Are there some dangerous animals that you have?
Oh, we have some dangerous animals, yeah. If you squeeze them, they're dangerous. Snakes. But the snakes, they're not really dangerous as long as you don't hurt them, as long as you just leave them alone.
But here you swim among, I don't know how many of them.
Yeah, there was a special island in the Banda Sea, the Gunung Api, and there you have really sometimes encounters where you can see in one frame 60 snakes.
They're all poisonous.
They're highly poisonous actually, but they are harmless. They don't care who you are, what you're doing here. As long as you don't hold them, squeeze them, they're not dangerous at all. I never heard of an snake attacking a diver.
The crew has noticed something in the water. We go in to have a look. Floating past is a tree trunk, which offers protection for hundreds of small fish. Beside it, seaweed and driftwood. Small filefish are hiding there. But Eddie is looking for one very particular fish in the seaweed, a master of camouflage, the sargassum frogfish. And there it is, the sargassum frogfish, but you have to look very carefully to be able to recognize it.
It's only seaweed. Do you want to see a little frogfish? We have to take the seaweed away. And here... Here it is, a little frogfish.
Beautiful, cute.
There were also several filefish. Sometimes we even found seahorses in the seaweed.
And they drift in the open sea?
Yes, they drift through the ocean. Now let's put it back in the sea.
Eddie, the guy from Europe in harmony with the wilderness of Indonesia. Our diving cruise is coming to an end. We still have one last night dive ahead of us. This time a squid greets us, attracted by the light. Further down on the sandy bottom, an enormous pufferfish. Pufferfish can fill themselves with water if they sense danger, to frighten a predator, but this one doesn't need to do that. Next to it, strange creatures. A baby epaulet shark crawls like a salamander over the sand. Observed by another sand dweller, the flying gurnard. A stargazer buries itself, lying in wait for a victim. And suddenly, a stonefish saunters past, the most poisonous fish in the world. A lionfish is hunting and snaps. Meanwhile, a crab watches us. But the star of the evening is this small octopus. Eddie, eye to eye with the octopus. You could spend the whole night here and still discover new creatures, but our diving time has run out. The dinghy with the Indonesian boatmen is waiting for us.
Lässig gewesen. Und die Oktopuszähne haben wir jetzt gleich.
Die haben wir jetzt gleich.
Also besser kannst du sie nicht mehr haben, mit dem Häuschen und allem. An der Rettungsruf schreibt jetzt.
Geht mal langsam.
Ja, man.
Es ist Bierzeit, oder? Eigentlich Bierzeit.
Our diving days in Eddie's Paradise have also come to an end. We return to Europe, but there is one man who remains here with his boat and continues to dive, always with a camera, always on the lookout for new wonders. Eddie.